a little while, but out here doing a little door dashing myself because I have this mission to pay off some debts and tend to do this on my days off from my regular job. So anyway, I wanted to just speak to you about a topic that it's kind of been floating back and forth today, and I just happened to have something happen to me while door dashing that just kind of shook me a little bit and made me really feel like this is the topic I wanted to lead with on this video. And that is, when you're trying to make plans or make arrangements to do something the correct way, and then you feel like you have the rug pulled out from underneath you. And it's something that we don't really talk to our children about as parents, because I think sometimes we don't want our kids to worry about adult problems. And that's all well and good while they're kids. But as they get older, these are circumstances and things that we do need to be talking to our teenagers and young adult children, because how else are they going to handle and deal with these types of situations when they become adults? And how does this pertain to the Watts case? Because these conversations typically are Watts related, and this is where it connects. Cindy Watts' entire professional career was with credit. Oh my gosh, what's it called? She basically handled like credit and issues dealing with credit, building credit, securing payment for people who were behind on things. So she knew a thing or two about finances. And they lived a very modest life, as far as modest when it comes to their home, the location that they lived in. North Carolina is not a high-paying state. I mean, if you look at it in the terms of nursing, you don't make hardly anything when you live in North Carolina and you work in North Carolina as a nurse. And it depends on where you are, of course, whether you're inside the big city or if you are, out in the country. All of that factors in. So don't come for me with the whole, oh, well, I live in North Carolina and I make really good money. You probably do make good money, and there is good money to be made, but there's a difference between good money and really good money. So why does this matter? It matters because how often did Cindy have these types of these are just questions I have, that if I were to sit down with Cindy, these are things that I would ask her. Is how often did you talk to Chris about money? How often did you talk to them about budgeting? And, when the bankruptcy came down, like, was that something that Chris came and talked to you about? And what were those conversations like? And I feel like these things are important, because what ended up happening to me just a few moments ago, I'm out here door dashing. I work a regular job. I pick up overtime when I can, but I have financial goals, and one of the things is to pay off certain debts. And so I door dash in my free time. A lot of people think you make a ton of money on YouTube. You don't. You spend hours putting together videos, and you don't quite make, you barely make anything, if that. It's literally like 20 cents for an hour by the time you factor everything in that you do to produce a YouTube channel. So I say that because I'm out here doing active work, boots on the ground. Each order earns me a little bit of money, and it's going to go towards a debt that I'm excited to get paid off and working really hard to pay off. Well, I'm out here hustling. Next thing you know, I must be hustling a bit too hard, because then the blue lights go up in my rearview mirror and I know immediately I must have been speeding, because I have a bit of a lead foot, and it happens. So the officer pulls me over, and thankfully he was really kind, and he said, he's like, asked how I was doing, and I told him I was fine. I was like, I was really trying not to get one of these, and he said, he ended up coming back, and he's like, look, I tried to give you the least amount of a ticket as I could, but it's still going to be, I think it ended up being like $138 or something like that. And I mean, he did me a huge service. Because it could have been much more expensive. But so I took the ticket, told him thank you, told him be safe, and went on to deliver the pizza that I had at hand that was due to be delivered. And it really rocked me, because I'm out here doing this in my quote unquote day off, and now it's like doing it to make money. Now it's costing me money. I mean, obviously, choices, shouldn't have been speeding, but when you're in these moments and it's like you're making progress, you're doing, like, I was doing really well this morning, and then you end up getting a ticket that snatches everything that you did for the entire day away from you, because now it's pretty much going to have to go to pay for the speeding ticket. And it's definitely frustrating. And when I'm a single mom with 2 children. Thankfully, they're older teenagers. They're not babies anymore. But if you think about it in terms of the Watts case and what was going on in their situation, one of the things that still baffles me is the amount of red flag, and we're not even talking gray flags at this, we're talking red flags that were going up that entire summer. And I 100% believe no one saw the murders coming. I don't believe anyone thought for a second that when they went back to Colorado that something this horrible was going to happen. I don't. I do believe that both families were setting themselves up for what could potentially be one hellacious divorce and custody battle. I do believe that was something at the forefront of both the Ruseks and the Watts, because divorce with children is messy. And we already can see it. It's not even speculation. You can see it in the text messages between Shanann and friends. And you can even see the naiveness of Kessinger. And I don't even, you guys know I don't like to give this woman a single shred of doubt, but it gives way to how naive Kessinger was to think that, oh, she's just blowing off steam, so she just, she took the kids and left, like, let her go. When you're a parent, you don't just let your kids go. You've got to figure out the parenting plan. You've got to figure out all the things. And so, looking at the situation at hand, that over that summer, and there's plenty of time to Monday morning quarterback it and say woulda, coulda, shoulda, but, and this is where I hate it when people get so ugly towards one set of the grandparents than the other. It doesn't matter whether it's the Ruseks or the Watts. When you think about it in, like, real terms, guys, real world stuff, like real time, you can tell your children, adult or young, until you're blue in the face about certain things. They're not always going to listen. And so, is it your fault that they don't always listen to you? No, it's not. It's because we all, no matter how old we are, have free will. Now, we're not free from the consequences, but we have free will. And do I think for a second that Chris and Shanann were going to like, do I think for a second that Chris and Shanann were going to separate and eventually get a divorce? Yes, I do. I think a lot was revealed during that trip to North Carolina that it gave both of them, I think it gave both Chris and Shanann, I think it gave both Chris and Shanann a wake up call to see that, okay, we're either going to really have to make this work or we need to get a divorce. And when we get a divorce, like, there's already been things in play. Like, there's already been movement. Because I don't understand why people fight the March, April beginning of, like, I honestly believe Kessinger probably entered the mix much sooner than what is alleged. But definitely by March, April, I believe Shanann already knew that there was someone else that was at the very least getting his attention. She would not have had such an in-depth conversation. And if you want to go back and listen to the testimony of the lawyer, and you guys have to remember, he gave this as a written statement to law enforcement, and he is not going to risk his law license to go and lie about a case. So people trying to turn this into something that it's not are a bit ridiculous. This lawyer was having dinner with his wife, and it was a hibachi restaurant. And if you've never been to a hibachi restaurant, you sit down typically with 8 to 10 other people, or 8 to 10 total around one hibachi grill, and they try to get you to mingle and interact and talk. And during the initial cooking of the food, yeah, it's pretty sparse, and you're interacting with the cook, but maybe not so much each other. But then there comes a time when the cooking of the food is done, and my apologies, the DoorDash had me going in loops for a second there. Um, so back to it. Once the cook is done preparing the food and hands it out to everybody, then what ends up happening most of the time is you're sitting there, and if you are a personable person and you talk to people, you don't have a problem talking to strangers, then you typically will just, I've been to some where we've had private conversations, myself and whoever I was with, and then I've also been there and we've had group conversations, or you talk to the couple that's sitting next to you, those types of things. Depends on your personality, but it's very plausible and very probable that it happened. Not to mention, the attorney is not going to lie to law enforcement. He has no reason to lie. At the time, they had no idea that the case was going to blow up like it did. And so anyway, this happened back in like March or April of 2018. And you fast forward to the summer and what was going on at the time, and then we listened to Chris's confessions or his time with law enforcement. And the one thing he talks about is, yeah, we talked about it because she knew that it was a 50-50 state. So in Chris's mind, and this is, let me just go ahead and say, the reason I'm sharing this part of it is because most of the time we talk about the gray areas that maybe they didn't reach the level of alert and alarm that they should have. And what can we take away from it? And especially on this channel, as well as my Avon Thrifts channel, I'll be sharing different tips and suggestions and pointers, especially when you're going through something as serious as divorce with children, or while you're pregnant, or while you're expecting for the dads. But these are some of those little eggs that were dropped along the way, like these little nuggets. And as a husband, picking these up and feeling like he's trying to do, I'm not giving this man any credit by any means, so please don't take it as that. But if we're talking before the plot and plan to kill the family came to be. We're looking at it through the lens of a man who, for what everyone can say, is quiet, observant, sits back, non-confrontational, all the things, but you're only going to take it so much. And then for him to go to his family, spend the time that he did with his family, spend the time that he did with Shanann's family, and they saw stuff, but again, it was things that, they're looking at it through the lens of this couple's been together for right at 8 years. Every couple has ups and downs. Every couple has seasons where things just aren't quite right and something's off. And aside from thinking, oh, they'll fix it when they go back home, nothing was alarmingly standing out to anybody as far as no one saw these murders coming. And it's, in my opinion, very important to note that this is why statistics should be something that are posted from a public health perspective. It should be posted everywhere, because the statistics on the death of a pregnant woman or an unborn fetus and familial side and what those statistics are important, because a lot of people don't know it, and a lot of the truths get weaponized. And I've mentioned it before, but the case up here in North Florida with with Wendy Adelson and her family, the whole murder for hire plot, because she couldn't move out of their hometown and go back to where she grew up to be near her family, as the trials and prosecutions would have you believe. It was a murder for hire plot. That's basically, we're on trial number 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on trial number 5, I believe. Yes, trial number 5 in that case. It's that crazy. But when you talk to different attorneys who are wanting to see this case prosecuted, they keep making comments like they can't believe that the wife left while the husband was out of town. And any good divorce attorney, I've said this in an earlier video, any divorce attorney is going to tell you that if you are planning to leave, then you leave when it's least confrontational, whether that is while the spouse is at work or you leave when they're out of town. And in the case of Dan Markel, the wife chose to leave, and she left the divorce papers on the bed. She packed up everything and left while he was out of town. Now, when you listen to prosecutors and attorneys that are discussing the case, they try to use this as a weapon against the mother. And it makes no sense, because it's the safest way. So we need to be making sure that we are properly educating people who are coming to, whether it's nurses, doctors, lawyers, family, anything. What's perceived out in the social world as far as YouTubers and people who are covering cases. I mean, I think Nancy Grace comes to mind big time, because she can get on a thought process of a case and she will literally be critical of every single thing that a person does, and you're discounting the reasons why someone would have done that, and the reasons do matter. It's not, a mother is not being evil for leaving while the father is away at work. She's being smart by not putting her children in the middle of an argument or a confrontation. And do I believe Shanann told Chris, you're never going to see the kids again? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Because I do believe that those may have been the words that set him off that morning. I keep wondering what in the world set him off that morning, what made it all go down like it did. I'm still not crystal clear. I don't think anybody will be. But I do believe that those words came back up, and all the little nuggets that he collected along the way supported what she said. Now, I've talked about the RV world trip when Shanann was in North Carolina. She did that. She went there with her family. RVs and camp, the RV living is a great lifestyle when you're a single parent, you're trying to get through school or something, and you need a temporary fix so you can get on your feet financially. Living in an RV is not a bad way to go, especially in North Carolina when your parents have some property and you could easily set it up there. She would have been taken care of, and the kids would have been taken care of, but it would have resulted in them having to go back mutually to North Carolina in order for the girls to be with Chris 50-50. And then if Chris was forced to move to North Carolina in order to maintain custody or share custody like that, then, and this is not how the court system would have worked. It actually would have worked in Chris's favor of they would have had to have stayed in Colorado, and Shanann would have been stuck in Colorado unless she signed the rights over to the girls, which would have never happened, and or Chris agreed to go back to North Carolina. But think about it. Kessinger had just landed her job with Anadarko. She was only contracted there, but she was hoping to get a full-time position with Anadarko. And Chris knew there was no way Kessinger was going to leave Colorado and go to North Carolina. Not going to happen. So if he gave up Kessinger, then why not work and fix things with your wife? But if he left his wife, then the only way he'd really get a chance to be as close to his kids as he wanted to be, in his mind, at least this is my opinion, the rationale was he would have to move back to North Carolina. And he didn't want to do that. So now he's really getting backed into a corner. He also knows Shanann's been talking to a lawyer. He knows Shanann's been talking to her friends and her family. He's been talking to his family. He's got ideas in his head. She's got ideas in her head. It's building up. And do I think he slips up, and I heard it. I'm going to have to try to find the clip. If I find the clip, it will be added to hopefully this spot. I'll have to come back and listen. But I'll try my best to get the clip. But in the video, or in the interview clip, when he's explaining her coming upstairs, taking a shower, he slips up and says she barely got to the bed. And I really believe that it was one of those things where, like, she barely got to the bed before she went off on him. Like, before something happened right before she got into the bed. And I'm going to have to go back and listen to the full prison interview again, because this is how it works with me on this channel, at least, is I listen to the interview and something will catch. Like, I will hear something again that I didn't hear the first time, and then it's like, okay, let's dig into this a little bit more. Something happened right before she got into the bed. Not sure what it is. Like I said, I'll have to do some more digging. But to wrap up this video, the concept and the thought process here is there are little nuggets of information that were dropped for Chris by Shanann, in my opinion, to hopefully dissuade him from running off with another woman, to hopefully encourage him, because she wouldn't have sent the book. And, she was really trying to reconnect with him. And she was acknowledging, like, okay, maybe I underscored, or I downplayed how much we had drifted apart, but clearly it was more than I thought, so now we really need to work on this marriage. And so you've got this woman trying to work on this marriage, and the man is, I think Chris was like 90-10. I think 10% of him wanted to, I think about 10% of him in his mind was like, okay, it's really not that bad. I need to be working on this. And then the 90% was he just wanted to run off with Kessinger. Or at least the thought of running off with Kessinger kept him from wanting to go back to his family. And along the way, these little nuggets were picked up and eventually launched into the final argument. And when all of it was building up, that's when it was, you know, he's started to feel like he was getting backed into a corner. He was going to have to figure something out. Now, I don't believe that this emotional conversation took place on the 13th. I believe this emotional conversation took place back around the 8th and 9th of August. And we have documentation for that. It's in the text messages. You can go into Discovery, read the text messages, and you can see verbatim the conversation that he claims that they had on the 13th. Shanann herself is putting that in a text message. Like, she's communicating that she's already been told this stuff by Chris all the way back to 8889, which was around the time that she had the ultrasound. And so, wrapping this video up, the gray area that I really wanted to share with you guys and just kind of bring some attention to is, should you ever find yourself in a situation where you are unfortunately going to have to file for divorce, or if things in your relationship, even if you're dating, if things are getting rocky and tumultuous and you're really trying to figure things out, be careful who you share things with and what you share. Because the last thing that you want to do is give away too much information that could at least protect yourself. Like, for example, if Chris had never known that she had already talked to a lawyer, maybe he wouldn't have considered just how serious it was. If she had never told him it's a 50-50 state, maybe he wouldn't have realized the leverage that he had. If, you know, God only knows the conversations that were actually had in North Carolina, not just with Shanann and her family, but with Chris and his family. The whole concept that Chris was deleting text messages between his father and himself, that's concerning. Very concerning. And I think the reason that law enforcement did not dig into it any further is because at the end of the day, the deed was done by their son. The parents were all the way on the other side of the country. And in Colorado, they only placed blame. They didn't, I guess, feel like they had a strong enough case to even... There's no way they could have prosecuted Chris, let alone a conspiracy charge with his family. And so that's my firm belief in why they left that whole section alone. Because at some point, you have to be accountable for the conversations that you have with people. Now, it doesn't mean that you tell them to go do this stuff. It doesn't mean that you say, shoot. Sorry guys, again, traffic is nuts today. It doesn't mean that you agree with it, or that, you know, you're telling them to go off the deep end, but it really should cause everybody to take pause when you're having serious conversations with people. And I challenge you just to be more present in the conversations that you're having. Listen to what your friends and your loved ones are talking to you about. Make sure that when you leave a conversation, you feel confident that there's not something that's brewing that you could potentially simmer down a little bit. And I know we live in a world where it's the whole, that's not my problem, that's theirs, etc. And it's unfortunate that so many people think and act and believe like that, because everyone's so quick to shout out their opinions online, but at the same time, no one wants to be the one that points out that, hey, like, I understand you're pressured and I understand you're stressing out, but it's going to be okay, or just try to be positive and see how we can think about it differently. And that's, I don't know. I say I don't know. I do know what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure that it's coming across the way I want it to. But overall, just really listen to the ones who come to you as a friend, as a loved one, who maybe just needs you to lend an open-minded ear to them so that they can express their frustrations. And then at the same time, recognize when things start building up or mounting up. Because sometimes your friends may not even see that things are mounting up and building up until you point them out. For example, the whole conversation, I think that's what the girls were doing. Shanann's friends were starting to put it all together. And it was like, no, don't stress about this. We can figure this out. This is how we can help you pay for the house. This is how, we can get this taken care of. It's not a big deal. And that was even before they were considering divorce. I mean, they weren't even talking divorce. The girls were just saying, hey, we can come move in there and basically help you guys get back on your feet. Like, he's probably not going to like it, but he'll get over it. And is that a dismissive and disrespectful tone to take? Yes, it is. However, when you're at the point where you're about to lose your house and everything that takes care of your children, you kind of have to throw your pride out the window there. And being in that relationship with Kessinger, I don't know that he was actually ready to do that. We always hear pride comes before the fall, and boy, did he fall. He fell for all the wrong things, for all the wrong reasons, and it's unfortunate because this could have turned out completely differently. And call it just a gut instinct, and I could be wrong, but having now gone to North Carolina, having now been to Colorado, and being there in the hometown where it all happened, literally walking on the same grass and the same sidewalks, and realizing the humble nature of this being literally a small town family, it begs the question of, they could have even turned this around. I mean, they hadn't been dating. I've said this before. They were together for almost a decade. There's no rhyme or reason why they could not have been able to patch it together and make it work. They could have even been separated for a couple of years. Do I think they could have come back together? I do, because I think there was something that kept the two of them together, that connected the two of them. But we'll never know, unfortunately. And unfortunately, the lives were lost, and both families are really struggling with it. But so I guess I'll go ahead and wrap this one up, but just wanted to highlight a couple things. Just make sure that when you are listening to a loved one talk about a stressful situation that they're in or that they're dealing with, I was listening to a different podcast, and they were talking about how trauma is not necessarily just how bad something is for one person. Like, you can't compare your traumas. You have to acknowledge that trauma to someone may not equate to the same trauma that you've dealt with, but it does not mean that the impact that it had on that person was any more or less than what you may or may not have felt when you were dealing with your own trauma. And I say this because having teenagers now, especially as a mom, the conversations and the topics that you talk about or that they talk about, it's recognizing and understanding that having a girlfriend in high school is exciting, but it's scary. Or even worse, having a crush on a girl. And to have the teens come and talk to you about it, or, it's cute and everything when things are good, but boy, when it doesn't work out, or when things, when she doesn't like the boy the same way, or she likes him and he doesn't like her, like, it seems petty and dramatic, but keeping in mind that a broken relationship in high school can be extremely traumatizing to the high school student. And it's not going to, in an adult's mind, compare to going through a divorce and the deepness that entails. However, the traumas that were unhealed from early adulthood throughout for both individuals is going to carry over with them. That's why until you see people actively working on themselves and actively trying to change for the better, that's where, at least for me in this case, that's where I feel like we did see those changes trying to happen with Shanann. I do believe she was actively trying to make the changes that she knew were needed. However, Chris was hell-bent that he was staying with Kessinger, or he wanted what was giving him the high at the moment, and that was Kessinger. And man, what devastation it caused. And anyway, so I think I keep trying to wrap it up, but I just keep getting these little nuggets of wisdom and ideas that keep coming to mind. But for the sake of this video and for this conversation, it's, take note of those that love you and trust you with open conversations and communication about problems that they're dealing with, and just pray for them, love on them, be objective with them. Don't always just feed into their egos. And you as a person should not expect the people who love and respect and care about you to always feed into your ego. So don't go around. I'm not a fan of cutting people off. Like, just because someone hurts your feelings, don't cut them off. Like, figure out what it is that you can learn from that relationship or that situation and do better. And become